He left me because his mother said I wasn't good enough. She told him, "You can do so much better." So, I walked away and built a life without him. Now, months later, she won't stop calling me, begging me to take him back. Turns out, the man she thought was too good for me isn't doing so well without me after all. I still remember the way he said it. Calm. Rehearsed. Like he had convinced himself this was the right thing to do. "I'm sorry, but we can't go through with the wedding." I blinked, the words hanging in the air between us. "What?" Ryan exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "My mom, she thinks you're not the right fit for our family." His mom. Of course. I should have seen this coming. From the moment we got engaged, his mother, Margaret, had made it clear that I wasn't good enough for her perfect son. She picked apart everything, my job, my background, the way I dressed, the fact that my family wasn't as wealthy as theirs. I thought Ryan was different. I thought he loved me. But now? Now he was standing in front of me, throwing away 3 years of our relationship because Mommy said so. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the sheer stupidity of it all was overwhelming. "So, let me get this straight," I said, crossing my arms. "We've been together for years. We've planned a life together. But because your mom doesn't approve, you're calling it off." Ryan's jaw tightened. She made some good points." I scoffed. "Like what?" He hesitated. Then, as if reciting lines from a script, he said, "You're nothing without me. I can do so much better." My stomach twisted. I knew those words weren't his. That was Margaret speaking through him. And suddenly, I saw everything clearly. Ryan wasn't the man I thought he was. He was a puppet. A weak, spineless man who would rather be his mother's little boy than fight for the woman he claimed to love. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "All right, Ryan." He blinked. "What?" I smiled. "If that's how you feel, I won't stop you." He looked confused, almost like he expected me to beg. But why would I? Why would I fight for a man who wasn't willing to fight for me? So, I grabbed my things, walked out of our apartment, and never looked back. Breaking up with Ryan turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. I focused on myself. Got a promotion. Moved into a gorgeous new apartment. Started traveling. Meanwhile, Ryan's life went to hell. At first, he was fine. He followed his mother's plan, dating the perfect woman she had picked for him. But then reality set in. The woman his mom chose? She treated him like garbage. Used him for his money, cheated on him, and dumped him within months. His career? Stagnant. He wasn't doing well without my support, and people at work started seeing him for what he was, mediocre. And Margaret? Oh, she was furious. She had spent so much time trying to get rid of me, convinced that her son could do better, only for him to end up alone, miserable, and struggling. And then, one night, my phone started buzzing. A number I hadn't seen in months. Margaret. I stared at the screen, stunned. Why the hell was she calling me? I let it go to voicemail. But she didn't stop. She called 10 times. And when I finally listened to her message, I nearly choked on my drink. Please take Ryan back. He's not the same without you. He needs you." Margaret left 10 voicemails. Each one was more frantic than the last. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but, please. Ryan isn't himself. He made a mistake. We all make mistakes. But you two belong together. I never meant to come between you. You were the best thing that ever happened to him." That last one almost made me laugh. Just months ago, she had told Ryan he could do so much better. Now, she was practically begging me to take him back. I didn't respond. But she didn't stop. The next day, I got a text from Ryan himself. Ryan, can we talk? Ryan, I know I messed up. Ryan, I miss you. I stared at my screen, shaking my head. Some people only realize what they had once it's gone. Curiosity got the best of me, so I reached out to an old mutual friend. What's going on with Ryan? I asked. The response? More than I expected. His relationship with the perfect woman his mom picked. Over. She had been interested in his status, not in him. Once things got difficult, she walked away without a second thought. His career? Stuck. Without my support and encouragement, he had stayed in the same position, while his colleagues moved ahead. His personal life? Isolated. His social circle had shrunk, people got tired of the way he let his mother control his decisions. In short, he was struggling. And now, Margaret had finally realized that maybe I wasn't the problem. A week later, I ran into Margaret at a coffee shop. She looked different. Less confident. More hesitant. She saw me, and instead of the usual judgmental glance, she actually smiled, a real, uncertain smile. You look well, she said. I nodded, sipping my coffee. I am. She hesitated. Then, carefully, she said, Ryan has been having a tough time. I raised an eyebrow. I heard. Margaret sighed, adjusting the strap of her purse. I just wanted to say that I misjudged you. I see that now. That caught me off guard. Margaret? Admitting she was wrong? She took a deep breath. He needs someone like you in his life. I let her words hang in the air for a moment. Then I smiled. Well, Margaret, I said, standing up, I hope he finds that person someday. And with that, I walked away. Ryan and his mother had made their choice. Now, they had to live with it. After that coffee shop encounter, I thought Margaret and Ryan would finally get the message. I was wrong. A week later, I received an email. From Ryan. I know I don't deserve another chance. But if you're willing to talk, I'd like to see you. Just once. No pressure. No pressure. After everything? I almost deleted it without replying. But something held me back. Curiosity, maybe. Or the need for closure on my terms. So, against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him. We met at a quiet cafe. Ryan looked different. Not better. Just different. Tired. Unsure. Like someone who had spent months realizing they had made the worst mistake of their life. For the first time since the breakup, he didn't look like the confident man his mother had built him up to be. He looked lost. Thanks for coming, he said, shifting in his seat. I didn't say anything. Just waited. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling slowly. I messed up. I know that now. I let my mom get into my head, and I didn't fight for you the way I should have. I tilted my head. Why tell me this now? He swallowed hard. Because I can't stop thinking about what we had. About what I threw away. I let that sit for a moment. Then I leaned forward slightly, my voice calm. Ryan, tell me something. If your mother walked in right now and told you to walk away from me again, would you do it? His face fell. And in that moment, I knew the answer. It didn't matter how much he regretted things. It didn't matter how lonely or miserable he was. He would always choose her. I smiled. That's what I thought. Ryan opened his mouth, to argue, to beg, I don't know. I didn't let him. I stood up, grabbing my bag. Take care, Ryan. And just like that, I left. I had finally walked away from the life I almost chose. And I didn't regret it for a second. Letting go of Ryan was the best thing I ever did. My life flourished in ways I never expected. I thrived in my career. The same week I met Ryan, I had been offered a promotion. I took it. Now, I was leading projects I once only dreamed about. I expanded my world. I traveled, met new people, and discovered things about myself that I never would have if I had stayed with someone who needed his mother's approval to love me. I met someone new. Someone who didn't need convincing to stand by my side. Someone who saw my worth from day one. One day, months later, I heard through mutual friends that Ryan was still struggling. Still stuck in the same place. Still under Margaret's control. And I was thriving. I thought that was the end of it. After walking away from Ryan for good, I felt free. Light. Like I had finally let go of the weight I didn't even realize I had been carrying. But Margaret? She wasn't done. A few weeks later, I got a message from an unknown number. Margaret, please, just meet me. One last time. I stared at the screen. Of all the things I expected, this wasn't one of them. Why was she still trying? Hadn't she realized that I was done? For a moment, I debated ignoring her. But then, curiosity won. I wanted to see just how desperate she had become. We met in a small restaurant. Margaret was already there when I arrived, sitting at a table in the corner. She looked nervous. Fidgeting. Unlike the composed, controlling woman I had known. I sat down. All right. You got me here. What do you want? She sighed, her hands tightening around her cup of tea. I know you have no reason to listen to me. But I need you to understand something. I raised an eyebrow. Do I? She swallowed hard. I was wrong about you. I blinked. That was the last thing I expected to hear. Margaret exhaled, staring down at the table. Ryan is lost. He's not the same without you. And I know I played a role in that. A role? She destroyed him. And now that he wasn't the successful son she had envisioned, she wanted me to fix him. I leaned back, crossing my arms. Let me guess. You want me to take him back? Margaret hesitated. I just want you to consider it. I laughed. A genuine, amused laugh. You spent years making sure I knew I wasn't good enough. And now that everything's fallen apart, I'm suddenly the answer. She flinched. I shook my head. No, Margaret. You don't get to rewrite history. Her face fell. She opened her mouth, to argue, maybe to beg. But I was done. So I stood up, looking her in the eye one last time. Ryan was your project. You built him up. You controlled his every move. And now that it's all crumbling, you want me to fix what you broke? She said nothing. I smiled. Soft. Final. I hope he figures things out. But it won't be with me. And with that, I walked away. For the last time. That was the last I ever heard from Margaret. She stopped calling. Stopped texting. I think, for the first time, she finally understood, I was never coming back. As for Ryan? Last I heard, he was still in the same place. Stuck. Unhappy. Living under his mother's control. And me? I had moved on. New job. New adventures. New love. And not once, not even for a second, did I regret the day I walked away. The past had finally let me go. And I had never been happier. Months passed. Then a year. I barely thought about Ryan anymore. His mother's desperate pleas, his regretful messages, it all felt like a distant memory. My life had changed in ways I never expected. I had moved up in my career. The promotion I took after leaving Ryan led to even bigger opportunities. I traveled, met new people, and built a life that was entirely mine. And then, something happened that I didn't see coming. I met someone new. His name was Adam. We met at a networking event, one I never would have attended if I had still been with Ryan, because back then, my world had been too small. Adam was different from anyone I had ever known. He listened. Really listened. He never made me feel like I had to prove my worth. He didn't ask for permission to love me, he just did. There was no hesitation. No outside opinions. No controlling mother in the background. It was easy. Effortless in a way I never knew love could be. And that's when I realized. With Ryan, I had always been waiting for him to choose me. With Adam? There was never a question. One evening, Adam and I went to dinner at a nice restaurant. We were laughing, talking, completely in our own world. And then, across the room, I saw him. Ryan. He was sitting alone. His suit looked expensive, but his eyes looked tired. Like someone who had spent years going through the motions but never really living. Our eyes met for a second. I saw the recognition. The regret. He started to move, to stand up, to say something, but I just smiled. Then I turned back to Adam, laughing at something he said, and never looked back. Because that's the thing about the past. Once you truly let it go, it has no power over you anymore. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need Ryan to suffer. I just needed to move on. And I did. Completely. Happily. Without a single regret. The past was over. And my future? It was finally mine.